Hey guys, I'm the Dragonsbeard and I'm back with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and today I've got another brand new Clan Boss team for you, and this one is really similar to the Myth Seeker that Skratch and I showed on his channel, but we're going to pull Seeker out to get rid of the crazy nuances of his passive randomly happening throughout the fight, and we're going to bring Deacon in his place. So this one's going to be called the Myth Deacon just because it's the same idea. Haikatun as a leader, Deacon in there to boost the turn meter, and he's also bringing that decreased defense. And then Demytha is going to bring block damage, and she's going to have that up every single turn. So that's the concept of the team. I'll show you the champions and the builds here in a minute, but I do, before we get into that, have to show the crazy amount of growth that the channel is seeing. So I did that video with Skratch about 2 weeks ago, and then Deadwood did another one of the teams that I built on his channel, and that has driven a ton of people in. If you came over from one of those two places, thank you so much. I appreciate you subscribing. We're at 600 and going. So we're trying to get to that 1,000 goal in order to get into Raid's content creator program. So thank you if you subscribed. If you haven't, hop down there, hit the button, ring the bell so you can get notifications and see what I have in store for you next. So let's get into the Clan Boss tune. Okay, so for the champions, first up is going to be Demytha. So she's the backbone of the team. She's bringing block damage. She's keeping everybody protected, and that is only up for one turn, so she has to go last in the turn order. And this is a 3-turn cooldown, so we actually have to run her as the only unkillable block damage champion in the team at a 3-to-1 ratio. So this is the hardest part of the team. She has to be super, super quick to achieve 3-to-1. Even faster than what the Myth Seeker team had because Deacon doesn't have as big of a turn meter boost. The other thing that she's doing is extending buffs, so that's important for 2 reasons. Number one, Brogni is going to come in for our block debuffs champion, and she's going to keep that active for longer so that we're protected for the affinity debuffs. And then the other reason is because Haikatun brings increased speed, and then she keeps it going continuously throughout the fight. She does not do a lot of damage. She's only going to have that 1 attack per clan boss turn, and she doesn't have super high multipliers to begin with, so that's not what she's here for. She's here to enable the rest of the champions to do their job. So I mentioned she has to be fast. 312 is the speed that she's running at. I actually had to borrow a few pieces from some of my arena champions to be able to put this together, and it's by far the hardest thing about putting this team together yourself, is her and Haikatun both have to be super quick. I was able to almost crit cap her with that speed, put a little bit of attack in there, as well as some crit damage. I do not need her accuracy to be that high. Only reason why it's that high is because my best dwarf banner is an accuracy banner, so keep that in mind. She has War Master. I did need Lore of Steel in order to get her to go this quick, and the rest of the stuff is not important. I have this for a different team where she's in a toxic set, so don't worry about the Sniper and Master Hexer. It doesn't really do anything for this specific comp. Next up is going to be our lead, who is Haikatun. So she does not have any masteries. Keep that in mind when you look at the damage at the end. She could be doing a lot more with War Master, but I'm out of gems, so I didn't have any chance to run her through Minotaur or what have. So she is also running super fast. She's the other 3-to-1 champion that's in the team, and she is at 310 speed. I was able to put decent attack stats on her. She's got almost 3,000 attack. She's crit capped and she has some crit damage, but you know, she's not there as a supreme damage dealer. Just keep that in mind. So what's she doing? She has this 19% all speed aura, which helps the speeds get a little bit lower for the rest of the champions. She's here for her A2. There's that turn meter boost and the increased speed I was talking about. And then we're turning off her A3 because her A1 actually has slightly better damage. So just that's the only other thing that she's doing is smacking a little bit. She cannot put the decreased speed on the clan boss, which is good because that would make the whole team fall out of whack. So that is our second champion. So she could be the lead, or you could also run Deacon as the lead. They have the same aura, and he would be the third champion. So what he's doing in the team is similar to what Seeker was doing in the one that I showed off with Skratch. So he's got decreased defense, but then the important part is that he's got this turn meter fill and the extra turn, and it effectively runs at a 2-turn cooldown just because of the way that the extra turn functions. So he's going to bring that turn meter boost every single time. He's running at 2-to-1 ratio, so he can be slower than what Haikatun and Demytha were at. I have him built at 204 speed, which is perfectly fine for Ultra Nightmare, as I'm going to show you. But I do have some speeds at the end, which I'll show you, which work on all 4 of the top difficulties, from Ultra Nightmare all the way down to hard. So in that, which I'll show you in the calculator at the end, he'll actually be running at 197. And the reason being is that this specific set of speeds only works on Ultra Nightmare. So put a little bit of attack on him, 3.3k, crit capped, 227 crit damage. He does not deal a ton of damage. He does need accuracy in order to land a decreased defense. So next up would be Fayne. So she is the damage dealer that I'm bringing in here. and she is running a lot slower than the other champion. So she's at 175. She's going to be the slow champion that kind of the turn meter boost will drag along in order to keep us ahead of the clan boss. And she's in attack boost, so she's able to stack that attack super high, 6.7k, crit capped almost, and 223 crit damage. She has weaken, she has poison, she has decreased defense, so she does need accuracy as well. And then the last champion, it can be a DPS if you're running this on Void and you have a way to get the stun to go specifically onto that champion. But in this case, I'm bringing in Brogni because I want this team to work on every single affinity, and I'll show in the calculator kind of why that works. Let me find him here. Here he is. So, he has the A3, which has the block debuffs on a 3-turn cooldown. So what's going to happen is he's going to put that up early in between the 2 AoEs, and then it's going to get extended, so it's up for the AoE 2 affinity debuff. And then, because he's running a 2-to-1 ratio, he will have that cooldown back again right before the stun, so that the team is protected for both the affinity debuff and the stun. And that is kind of the entire reason why this becomes affinity friendly. So he is at 203 speed, he's crit capped, he's got over 3,000 attack with some crit damage, and then I want him to land his HP burn, so I did put a little accuracy on him, and that's the reason why he's built that way. So my masteries, he's not really actually going to be doing Giant Slayer. Here's the thing with his passive and his shield. He does have the shield that he puts up, he does grow the size of the shield with his A2, but block damage is going to prevent that shield from taking any damage, so that part of his kit is kind of very underutilized in this theme compared to what it would be in an Infinity comp or in a regular Killable comp, or one of the Man-Eater ones where he's actually still taking damage because of Unkillable instead of block damage. So just keep that in mind. He's not supreme for block damage build, but I just needed him in here for the Affinity. I would use Cardiel if I had him, or you could even use Blind Seer since they both have that 3-turn cooldown for block damage, or sorry, block debuffs. So here's the team. I've already got plugged in, and I'm going to show you what you need to do to the AI in order to make it work on full auto. So it's going to be full auto against every affinity except for Spirit, because we need to delay Brogni's A3 just a tiny little bit against Spirit in order to protect us from the first affinity debuff, but that's the only one that we have to do that with. So Deacon and Fayne will both do exactly what we need them to on full auto, so you don't have to configure them. For Hakatone, really the only thing that we're doing is turning off our A3 since the A1 just does slightly more damage with the multiplier. And then I've heard people talking about how she sometimes skips her A2. I don't really know why, but I went ahead and set it in as first priority just in case that is true, so it would never happen. So Demytha is the only one with a real delay, so we need her to open with her A1 to give us a 1-turn delay on the A2, and then the A3 comes right after. And she repeats that cycle throughout the entirety of the fight, A1, A2, A3. And then for Brogni, you don't really need to set his A3 as a first priority and A2 as a second priority, but I have that in there just because. So I've got this one pre-recorded because there's no setup involved, but I do want to kind of talk you through what's going on here in the beginning. So Hakatone is going to start off by throwing up the increased speed, and then when it comes back around to Demytha, that's going to get extended, and then at that point forward, we're going to have that permanently throughout the rest of the encounter, and that's going to keep our champions at the speeds they need to be. So you saw that extension just go through there. There's going to be a couple times where Demytha, just like right now, throws up her block damage, and then it's going to immediately fall back off of all the champions even before the clan boss goes. And that's going to happen twice because it does not fall into sync until the end of turn 3, clan boss turn 3 I should say. So one more time here, she's going to use her block damage, and I think 2 champions are going to lose that buff before the stun happens. But again, these turns doesn't really matter. We're not into sync until the end of turn count 3. So there we go. First stun goes through, and then at this point you're going to see that it's going to cycle back around to Demytha, and she's going to use her block damage at the very end of the turn, right before the clan boss has its turn to act. And then at that point forward, we are going to be in sync for the remainder of the encounter. So there we go, and here comes the clan boss hit. So from this point forward, it is just exactly what you saw there. Everybody cycles through, Demytha goes last, and then we're protected the rest of the way. So since this is a long fight, I'm going to speed it up to like 8 times speed, kick on some music, and then I will join you back at the end. All right, guys, so here we are, 60.5 million damage, just about 10 million short from one key. So Deacon did 11, and then Hakatan 3.3 probably would be closer to that 10 million mark with War Master, just like Deacon, but again, I don't have masteries on her. Demytha, I would not really expect much more than 5 million from her, so 4.9 where she's at. Brogni really impressed me, doing 16 million and some change when I really brought him in here just to block debuffs and not really be a damage dealer. That's pretty nuts. And then Fayne as the poisoner, of course, she's going to be cranking out the most damage, a little over 25 million. So I ran the same exact team against Magic earlier this morning. So we've got 3 weak affinities in here against Magic, and you see all Deacon and Hakatan and Fayne took quite a bit of damage loss, but then Brogni cranked out over 20 million himself, which was pretty cool. The fun one that I put together was actually with my favorite Turvold. So since he's not a poisoner, I went ahead and put Brogni and Deacon both into toxic gear, and they put up some pretty respectable numbers, but Turvold doing 44 million on his own. The reason why this works, by the way, is he does take his extra turn, but because he's losing Hakatun's speed buff and then replacing it with his own, it's effectively the exact same as if her buff stayed on the DPS champion. So I just had to put a 1-turn delay on his A2 in order for the speed buffs to match up. So that was fun to get this into 1 key territory. So let me hop over in the calculator. I'll show you kind of what I did to make this work on all the affinities, or sorry, all the difficulties, and then we'll be done. So what I've got plugged in here in the calculator are all of my exact speeds I just showed you on Ultra Nightmare. And you'll see that starting with turn 3, this is when that block damage falls into sync. And we've also got the block debuffs for both the AoE 2 and the stun. But if I toggle my speeds over to Nightmare, then it falls out of sync. So I figured out a way that I could drop Deacon down to 197, Brogni down to 202, and then Fayne down to 171, and then it comes back into sync for Nightmare. And then if we go back and toggle it to Ultra Nightmare again, then it still stays in sync with the block damage exactly where we need it. And it also works on hard. So these are the speeds building it from scratch that I would use, or something similar. So you're looking for those patterns for your specific champions when you're doing it yourself. For brutal, it does not work, but you can add a 2-turn delay to Hakatun, and then you can drop Demytha's delays down a little bit, and then you'll start to see it fall back in sync again. So for brutal and spirit affinity, that's the only combination of difficulty and affinity that I have not found this be able to work. So if you get a team that works on everything except for brutal spirit affinity, I don't think that's that much of a big deal. So the last thing I want to show you in the calculator is what you need to do against spirit in order to make this work. So we are going to add a 2-turn delay to Brogni, and he's going to be able to block the first decreased speed when it comes out. And he's also going to be able to block the stun if it hits anybody except for Hakatun and Deacon, who lose the block debuffs. If it hits one of them, Deacon is perfectly fine. So you're going to want to run Deacon as your lead, so that when Godseeker goes ahead of him over here, she's able to cleanse the stun off of him before he wastes his turn and messes up his cooldowns. So keep that in mind. Against Spirit, you're going to want to make sure that Deacon is your lead and not Hakatun. You can even put the Steadfast Mastery on Hakatun to make sure that she is not the one that gets stunned. She's the only one that cannot get stunned and have it still sync up. What's going to happen here is that you're not going to use Brogni's A3 on the end of Clan Boss turn 3. You are going to save it for one more turn and use it at the top of turn count 4. And as soon as you use his A3 on turn count 4, then you can click auto and you can let it run, because from this point forward it will work exactly the same as the other affinities and difficulties I showed you, and it's going to be protected for every one of the AoE 2s and stuns as it comes up. Alright guys, that's going to be it for the Myth Deacon team. If you can reach the speeds for Hakatun and Demytha, you should be able to achieve an easy 2-key for Ultra Nightmare, and again, with Turvold or Draco or a second DPS instead of Brogni, you can even scale that up into the 1-key range as I showed you. So I've got more Demytha tunes coming on the channel, and some other things like how you actually go through the process of building your own custom clan boss team if it's a tune that nobody's discovered yet. So I hope that you guys are going to enjoy what I have in the pipeline for you. And until then, I've been the Dragonsbeard. Thanks for watching.